So I'm really happy to have Suzi Crockford talking with us today amongst all these brilliant women that have joined us over the last week, and there's a few more to come over the next week as well. And Suzi is one of my shamanic teachers, and she's based in Dartmoor in Devon. And I know that I'm really excited about her sharing about her boundaries, and I'm really excited about her sharing and working it into conversations about boundaries, about her relationship with nature, because I find that so deeply inspiring. And I know it's such a big part of Suzi's life and Suzi's practice. So a little bit about Suzi before I hand over to her is she is a shamanic practitioner. And she's based, as I said, in Dartmoor, and she does one-to-one work with individuals online now, as well as in person whenever she starts that up again. I don't know if you started already, Suzi. And she works with groups as well, doing year-long work, which I've done with Suzi too. And she creates the most beautiful, along with her husband Fergus, most beautiful drums and instruments for shamanic practice and shamanic work. And she's just mentioned to me that her podcast is launching on Patreon soon. So her and Maggie, and I'm always really excited about your podcast, as you know, Suzi, because it kind of links up my background as well. So Suzi is a shamanic practitioner, and Maggie, who she shares the podcast with, and they talk between each other as wise women. Maggie is a vicar, or is she a priest? I can't remember which way she works. She's a vicar. So they share this amazing podcast together. Is it The Vicar and the Witch, or Wise Women?
It's called, I might add, I didn't make the title, Wise Women, the Vicar and the Witch we are.
So have a look for her podcast, and I'm going to try and link it up underneath whatever recordings I send out of this as well, because I love that. And there's so many brilliant bits of wisdom within it. But what I was going to say is why I love that is because I come from a background of theology. So I did my degree in Christian and Jewish theology, which is pretty much exactly what Maggie has a background in as well. Yes. So I now am working shamanically. So we've got this, it just resonates with me, all of the stuff that you talk about from both angles. It hits all of those memory buttons for me. And I really love it.
Great,
so have a look at those if you haven't seen those. And that is Suzi. And Suzi, living in such a beautiful, beautiful, amazing part of the world, has a slightly slower internet connection than maybe many of us do. So what I've done is I have handed to her the questions that I wanted to ask her. And I'm just going to hand over to Suzi now and let her talk to us for as long as she wants, but probably maybe 20-ish minutes. But, you know, interject or stop or do whatever you want whenever you want, Suzi. And I'm going to hand over to Suzi and ask her to share with us about her boundaries.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sorry about my internet connection. It is deplorable. Okay, so Ruth gave me some questions. You gave me some questions, and I'm just going to do my best to answer them. So you asked me what are boundaries for me, and the first thing that happens to me when the word boundaries is spoken is that an image pops into my mind of a picket fence. I'm ashamed to say it's a picket fence, and my wolf ally circling the fence, and there is a gate in this fence. And for me, that comes from a really, really early practice. I think before I even knew shamanism was called shamanism, you know, this is from quite early on in my life, where I discovered that I had this sort of spirit ally, invisible friend, if you like, because I think I was still a kid actually, and that he basically was far better at judging stuff and making decisions that were right and safe for me than I was. And so I knew that around me energetically there was this kind of area which some things should never cross, and that he was the one to check with for whether or not stuff should be crossing this boundary. And so if I am ever unsure about whether it's a no thank you or a yes please, then I just cast a little fraction of my attention to him, and it's like, is he opening the gate or is he standing there with his hackles up? And yeah, so boundaries for me is a literal boundary in metaphorical form kind of thing. This is weird. I feel like a weird wambler because I know you're not gonna speak back because we're very juddery, and I hope it's actually coming through all right. Is it good? Okay, thank you. So the next question was, what relationships stick out in my mind when Ruth asks the question, what about boundaries? And so the other thing that came straight up for me when you ask about boundaries is, there's a kind of series here. So I, as Ruth knows, because she's heard me say it a bazillion times, I firmly believe in the statement, the way we do something is the way we do everything. And you only have to, pick up a newspaper, turn on a media platform of your choice, or even possibly look out the window, depending on where you live. And you will immediately see that we have crossed a bunch of boundaries in nature. So we are, for me, the kind of the overtly obvious, even though it's actually probably by no means the biggest deal, but the most obvious metaphorical thing is fracking. Trying to extract from the earth energy which is so not being freely given. And that we do that to the earth, but we also do it to ourselves. And that the thing we have, in the consumerist West, but also in the West that has in its history the kind of Puritan work ethic, is we are constantly striving for more, whether it's more stuff, more money, more security, more whatever it is we imagine we need. And that we again constantly going beyond what we can freely give, particularly I think as women, but it's it's obviously there in the contorted patriarchy. It's there in humans, and in fact perhaps if you're going to really go with the kind of gendered metaphor of active and receptive, the active is constantly plundering the receptive for more, and doing the action of taking more instead of the action of, no, I'm defending the sacred, the beautiful, the necessary, the earth, that thing which we are non-existent without. And that, again, in conversation with the spirits, one of the things that they I guess this is why I repeat stuff so often, is because I'm a bit dense, and so they have to repeat stuff often to me before it kind of trickles out of, yes, I really get that, to, oh, okay, I really get that. Which is that we speak a lot about restoration. I speak a lot about restoration, particularly in relationship to balance, which is obviously we need to restore balance urgently on our earth. And they say to me, and they're kind of taking my head in their hands and going, ABC woman, the most important part of the word restoration are the first 4 letters, rest. And that's the boundary that gets broken so often, and certainly historically for myself, that's the boundary I've broken the most often in me, is just keeping on going when really I need a rest. And so I guess a big part of speaking about boundaries has to be no, followed by I'm going for a rest. And so your next question, Ruth, was, in my relationship with nature, how do boundaries play out? And that plays out, therefore, in 2 very kind of opposing ways. So on the one hand, I'm looking at what we're doing to that being that we tend to call nature, which we're in fact doing to ourselves because we are nature. And that in our relationship with nature, we need to find the boundaries that really should be sacrosanct and sacred. The boundaries that say, no, you can't take more because she doesn't have more to give. And then on the other way, I think, you know, one of the most dangerous boundaries that we have is the idea that there is a boundary between us and nature, that somehow nature is other, and that we are not simply a creature among the many creatures, a mammal among the many mammals, you know, a being among the many beings who share this beautiful planet. And that if we were able to drop the sense of being separate and that fake false boundary that exists between us and the rest of life, us and the other than human world, then, you know, everything would be transformed in such a beautiful way, if we could understand that. And that when you do that, when you drop the sense of separation between myself and other, just even if you do it on a sort of practical intellectual level, never mind on an energetic level, you start behaving in really, really, really different ways, and fracking the earth and fracking yourself for energy you don't have become, you know, as ludicrous as they are, on a good day. So yeah, that and that, you know, the lessening of the boundaries between intellectually between us and all that is hopefully arrives us, sorry about my English, at a place where we can really start to experience the all that is as a community of which we are a part, not just intellectually, but, you know, with the prickles on our skin and the muscles in our heart and the knowing of our belly. We are indivisibly interwoven with all of the rest of life. And that's not just, oh yeah, duh, I need a tree for my breath. That's experientially as well. And so as we start to let go of those boundaries that say that I'm separate from a tree or I'm other than the river, we can then experience what it is to be alive in, for me, a far more authentic and human way. And we can start to begin to take tiny little baby steps towards perhaps knowing, I mean, it sounds like such a grandiose claim, but knowing the language of all things, to be able to start to hear the rest of life with a capital L, and, you know, experience and sing its songs and feel its incredible joyousness. And also then, excuse me, will come with it. And I think this is part of why maybe, I mean, there's so many reasons, but part of why we don't do it now, even knowing what we know, is we're then going to experience the overwhelming grief that comes with letting that love and that reality of that connection in. But we have to, because, you know, grief is the left hand of love, but love is what happens before grief, but it's also what happens after grief. And in a way, grief is the kind of initiatory river that we have to swim across to get to the other side, where we will actually really, really, really start to be what we're supposed to be. And then as soon as we're that, we'll start to create the life and the surroundings, whatever, where all beings can truly thrive. So that's that. So then your next question is, you asked me to speak about spirit and boundaries. And this is a really important topic as far as I'm concerned, because there's, on the one hand, I'm saying, you know, let's forget about the boundaries between us and all the rest of life, but also let's not then imagine that we should simply let whatever comes along in, because that's not healthy, and that's not conducive to us being what we're here to be. If we're desperately trying to kind of become other, or let all that is other flow through us, then we will lose our own authenticity. And each thing is supposed to be the best of itself in the warp and the weft of life. And if we can be the best of ourselves in the warp and the weft of life, then we make the fabric of life the incredibly beautiful thing, or we help make the fabric of life the incredibly beautiful thing that it's meant to be. And that therefore our job is be the best me. And the best me must be beautifully in connection with all of the rest of life, but it mustn't lose sight or hold of what it is to be me. And so I see it, actually, I think I see it a bit less than I used to, but people who start embarking on a kind of a path of connection and a path of understanding that everything is interwoven and connected, everything does have spirit, that then in a pretty unboundaried way will let all kinds of spirit beings into them. And that's not good. You know, you need the difference. I love this. I can't remember who said this, but the difference between a madman and a shaman is that the shaman knows when they are in ordinary reality here amongst the material things and when they are in the world of spirits, and the madman doesn't. And the shaman can open and close the door with precision and with skill and with purpose, and the madman has none of those things. And so the boundaries between, am I here, am I there, am I speaking with somebody who is actually, for example, a well and wise ancestor, or am I speaking simply with somebody who is recently dead? Because if they are recently dead and they haven't become the well and wise ancestor, then they're that same person, but with no body. And so they're no wiser than they were when they're alive, you know, and we have to have, back to the wolf and the picket fence, we have to have that discernment and that kind of capacity to say, you know, no, not you. I'll absolutely help you where you need to go, but I'm not going to listen to you or let you into my field or any of those things. So those boundaries, again, are, you know, as with all things, we must keep them in balance. You know, yes, maybe let the blackbird song flow through you, bring with it all its joys, but, you know, the other things, not so much, perhaps. So I guess there's a way in which, for me, all boundaries are predicated upon a kind of clarity around the appropriateness of what you let in and what you don't let in, and that, you know, in all regards. So your last question was, do I have any tips on holding those aforementioned boundaries? And so as a teacher of shamanism and as a shamanic practitioner, yes, absolutely. My kind of in shamanic practice tip would be, make sure you understand and know who your body protector is, and make sure that at all times you are in connection with said body protector, and that you pay attention to them, and when they're going, you know, excuse me, don't do that, that you then don't do it, or whatever, you know, and that if you are not in a position to, you know, go galloping off into the other world and go, excuse me, who's my body protector? And in fact, to that end, I should be really clear that in the map of the other world in shamanic terms, so the map of the other world is a tree, and ordinary reality, material reality, is where the trunk is. The lower world, the underworld, is where the roots are, and the upper world is where the branches are. And in the lower world and the upper world, because they have no material reality, there are no, nothing bad can happen to you. There are only wise, compassionate, utterly loving, all-knowing spirits in these places. The same cannot be said clearly for the middle world, because the middle world is where the material world exists. So we know that there is not only wise, all-knowing, utterly loving things in the middle world. And so if you don't know who your body protector is, don't go dancing out into the middle world saying, who's my body protector? You need to go and find your ally, either your power animal in the lower world or your upper world guide in the upper world, and say, you, wise, compassionate, beloved, who I know is here for me and me alone, please will you take me to meet my body protector, so that you just don't adventure out into the middle world without that body protector. But they can then come with you into this reality and be with you at all times. And that's obviously a really good idea, because they are also a wise, compassionate, utterly loving, all-knowing spirit whose job is to protect you. And so, yes, they're a very good person to ask about. Where is my boundary on this? What's the wisest place for me to put my boundary, given that I want to, live to an old age and be wise. And if you aren't doing the shamanic thing, then my tip, I guess, really is twofold. The first is that there's a very beautiful and potent visualization that you can do, understanding that intention has extraordinary power and that everything is interwoven and interconnected. And whether you know them or not, you do have a power animal, a body protector, and an upper world guide. And that if it is your intention that they will help you and protect you and keep you safe, then they will. And that a very powerful conjuring of that protection simply through breath, will, imagination in service to the will, you can create a magical protective cloak. And if you do that as an act of really, willful, deliberate imagining, so everything about this cloak, not just what color it is, but what's the fabric, what does the weight of it feel like on your shoulders, does it have lining, what's the stitching, how does it do up, how far can you bring the hood down over your head, does it reach all the way to the ground, does it trail slightly, does it disturb leaves as you're walking along in it. It has to be a proper conjuring, so that you could completely convince another person that this cloak existed, because you feel it, and that if you do that as a magical act of, if I feel the prickles on the back of my neck go up and I need protection, then I'm going to call this cloak around me. And in fact, perhaps it is my will that I am wearing this all the time. It doesn't make me feel hot or weighed down. It's there all the time. I call upon the protection of my spirits and my allies and my helpers, even if I don't know who they are. So that, and then finally, my advice would be, regarding boundaries of every kind, is take a minute and really, really, really listen to the wisdom of your body, because it knows. And we're not used to really checking in with ourselves in that way, but we do know, really. And even even the most profoundly kind of indoctrinated into the consumer culture, given 10 minutes and asked, what do you really want? They don't really want a new Gucci belt. They want a rest, or a time by the sea, or time in the arms of their beloved. And it's only the terrible rush that our whole culture's in that stops us from knowing our boundaries. And they have the contorted patriarchy has swept them out of the way and told us that we don't need boundaries, we just need a new thing. So that, have I rambled on probably non-stop for 20 minutes yet? Speak to me, Ruth, this is very strange.
It's, oh goodness, I'm kind of glad I did it that way, because listening to your words without me interjecting or just going off on my random mind journey was so beautiful. And I am so grateful, Suzi, because you gave us a different viewpoint from the other women that I've spoke to so far. And I can see now why before we started recording, you said, I didn't listen to anyone else. Let's do this first, and then I might listen to some of the others, because actually, yeah, you'll probably see when you watch the others, it would have potentially taken you off on different routes. And actually what you just did was, wow, gorgeous and amazing. And also really helpful for me, because it's sort of gone, yes, okay, Ruth, you've added some of the right things in to this course as well. So when I went into the aspect of in the boundaries course, the aspect of spiritual boundaries, I didn't actually do a huge amount, but all that I've done there is, well, I've done more than just this, but one of the things I've done is really put in there about, we've got a drum journey, we've got about these body protector. So that was, I felt like, the most important thing. And just great to hear everything else of the shamanic teaching around boundaries, and especially your connection to the earth. That was just perfect and beautiful. And for me, in my learning with you, it was the connection between earth and our bodies that really, and sovereignty within that, was really hard hitting for me in such a helpful way. And I think actually maybe doing this course has happened because of that realization that you gave me of sovereignty and our bodies and the earth needing this and needing us to remember it and come back to it so strongly. So thank you so much for your time today, Suzi.
Thanks for having me.
It's so great, and have a wonderful rest of May Day. And I hope you're having a wonderful Beltane.
Well, could be better. There could be, you know, maypole in the village and beautiful girls dancing with their hair in flowers and all that. But hey, it's still Beltane, and the land is still singing, and it is, yeah, beautiful to feel the upthrust of spring. So as ever, you know, so funny, every year I'm like, yeah, it's spring, as if I'd forgotten. And in some ways I think I do forget that spring will ever come in winter, and so it always feels very exciting and delicious when it really starts to come. So yeah, so lovely to see you, and let's talk soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Suzi. I'll see you soon.
Lots of love. Bye.
Bye bye.